The signal came at 3:47 inches the morning. It arrived at every satellite, every radio tower, and every screen on Earth. At the exact same moment, the world woke up to a sound it had never heard before. A voice that was not human. Dr. Una Park was already awake when her phone rang. She had been studying old transmissions at the Seoul Xenolinguistics Center, drinking cold coffee and reading reports that nobody believed. For 20 years, she had told anyone who would listen that they were not alone. Now, as she watched the symbols scroll across her screen, she felt no joy, only fear. The message took her team 6 hours to translate. When they finished, Una sat in silence for a long time. Her hands were shaking. The Galactic Council had spoken. Humanity was summoned. One representative. One chance. The charges were simple. Humanity had committed crimes against universal order. The trial would take place at the Galactic Nexus. If humanity refused to send someone, the Council would consider it an admission of guilt. The punishment for guilt was not explained. Within hours, the world knew. Every news channel showed the same footage. Every government held emergency meetings. People gathered in the streets, some praying, some crying, some holding signs that said things like, "We are not afraid," and "Earth first." But everyone was afraid. Everyone. In Geneva, the United Earth Council met for the first time since the Swarm War. That war had ended 15 years ago, but the memory was fresh. The collective swarm had come without warning. Billions of creatures, spreading across space like a disease, eating everything in their path. Humanity had been new to space travel then. They had only 3 colonies. The galaxy expected them to die. They did not die. The war lasted 7 years. Humanity lost millions. They lost 2 colonies. They lost friends and families and children. But they did not lose their will. When the swarm finally fell, the galaxy watched in silence. A species that had been in space for less than a century had defeated an enemy that had consumed dozens of worlds over 50,000 years. The galaxy did not celebrate with humanity. The galaxy was afraid of them. Now, Admiral Minho Kang stood before the council representatives and spoke with a voice like thunder. He was a tall man, with gray hair and scars on his face from the war. He had led the final battle against the swarm. He had watched his own son die in that fight. "We should send a fleet," he said. "We should show them that we are not animals to be judged. We are warriors. We earned our place in this galaxy with blood." The politicians disagreed. They wanted to send diplomats, people who could smile and talk and make deals. They wanted to show the galaxy that humanity was peaceful, reasonable, and willing to cooperate. The scientists wanted to send researchers, people who could study the council, learn their technology, and find weaknesses just in case things went wrong. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a plan. But nobody wanted to volunteer. The message was clear. One representative. Alone. No weapons. No ships. Just one human. Standing before 42 alien species to answer for the sins of their entire world. That was when John Morrison spoke. He was sitting in the back of the room. Most people had forgotten he was there. He was 62 years old, thin and tired-looking, with white hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple gray suit. He had no medals on his chest, though he had earned many. "I will go," he said. The room fell silent. People turned to look at him. Some of them recognized his face from old news reports. Others did not know him at all. Minho Kang frowned. "John Morrison, the survivor of first contact." John nodded slowly. "That is what they call me. 30 years ago, before the swarm, before humanity knew anything about the galaxy, a small research ship had encountered an alien vessel. John had been a young soldier then, assigned to protect the scientists. The meeting went wrong. Nobody knew exactly what happened. When the rescue team arrived, they found only one survivor, John Morrison, floating in the wreckage, barely alive. He never spoke about what happened that day. But the nightmares never stopped. After that, John became a diplomat. He helped build the first treaties between Earth's nations after the discovery of alien life. He helped unite humanity during the Swarm War. He gave speeches and wrote papers and tried to prepare the world for a future among the stars. Then his wife, Nari, died. Cancer. The enemy he could not fight. After her funeral, John retired. He moved to a small house by the sea. He watched the waves and waited for the end. Now, he stood before the most powerful people on Earth and offered himself as a sacrifice. "Why you?" asked one of the politicians. "Why should we trust you with the fate of our entire species?" John looked at her with those calm eyes. "Because I have nothing left to lose," he said. "Because I have seen what they can do, and I am not afraid. Because someone needs to go, and I would rather it be me than someone who still has a life to live." The room was quiet for a long moment. Minho Kang walked forward. He had known John during the war. They had never been friends, but there was respect between them. The admiral looked at the old man and saw something in his eyes. Not hope, not courage, something deeper, something that had been tested by fire and loss and time. "You will be alone," Minho said. "No backup, no weapons. If they decide to kill you, there is nothing we can do." John smiled. It was a sad smile, the kind that came from a man who had already said goodbye to everything he loved. "I have been alone for a long time, Admiral. This is nothing new." 3 days later, John Morrison boarded the small ship called the Horizon's Edge. He carried one bag with a few clothes, some photographs, and a letter his wife had written him before she died. He had never opened it. He was saving it for the right moment. As the ship rose into the sky, billions of people watched. Some cheered, some wept. Most simply stared, wondering if they would ever see this man again. John looked out the window at the blue planet below. His home. His world. The place where he had loved and lost and lived. "I will not fail you," he whispered. "I promise." The stars waited. The galaxy watched. And John Morrison flew toward a trial that would decide the fate of humanity. He was alone, but he was not afraid. The journey to the Galactic Nexus would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence, darkness, and stars. John Morrison had plenty of time to think. Perhaps too much time. The Horizon's Edge was a small ship, built for speed rather than comfort. It had 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen, and a control room filled with screens and buttons that John barely understood. The ship flew itself. He was just a passenger. On the first day, he unpacked his bag. He put his clothes in the small closet. He placed the photographs on the desk next to his bed. His wife Nari smiled at him from the pictures, young and beautiful, with long black hair and bright eyes. There was another photo of them together on their wedding day, standing under cherry blossoms in Seoul, and one more photo, older and faded, of John in his military uniform, standing with his unit before the first contact mission. 7 young faces, 7 friends. Only John came back. He put his wife's letter in the drawer. He still was not ready to read it. On the second day, Eun Ji-han contacted him. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with short hair and glasses that made her look like a student. But she was one of the smartest people on Earth. She had designed the translation software that the ship used. She had also volunteered to be John's support during the mission. She would monitor his journey, provide information, and keep him company across the vast distance of space. "Good morning, Ambassador," she said through the screen. Her voice was warm but professional. "How are you feeling?" John looked at the endless darkness outside his window. "Like a man flying toward his death," he said. but otherwise fine. Yoonji did not laugh. She understood that he was not entirely joking. I have prepared files on all 42 council species. Would you like to start studying? John nodded. Show me what I am walking into. Over the next several days, Yoonji taught him everything humanity knew about the Galactic Council. It was not much, but it was enough to worry him. The council had existed for over 300,000 years. It was ruled by the Veilith, an ancient species that had achieved spaceflight when humans were still living in caves. The Veilith were tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that held no emotion. They believed themselves to be the most advanced beings in existence. They had stopped fighting wars long ago. They had stopped feeling emotions long ago. They considered such things to be signs of primitive life. The other species followed the Veilith because they had no choice. The council controlled trade, travel, and technology across the galaxy. To go against them meant isolation and death. They do not understand us, Yoonji explained one night. They watched us fight the swarm. They saw how we sacrificed ourselves, how we kept fighting, even when victory seemed impossible. To them, this is madness. No rational species would accept such losses. John thought about the war. He thought about the young soldiers who charged into battle knowing they would not return. He thought about the mothers who sent their children to fight. He thought about his own friends, dying one by one, never giving up. They think we are dangerous, he said. Yes, Yoonji replied. They think we are animals. Violent, unpredictable, and impossible to control. The swarm was supposed to kill us. When we survived, the galaxy did not know what to do with us. So they watched and waited. And now they have decided we are too dangerous to live. Yoonji was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that John would remember for the rest of his life. Ambassador, I need to tell you something. I have analyzed the Council's communication patterns, their voting records, their history of dealing with species like us, and they have already decided. This trial is not about justice. It is about appearance. They want to show the galaxy that they gave humanity a chance before they destroy us. Thanks for watching. This for Wantu. John leaned back in his chair. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Millions of worlds. Billions of lives. All of them watching, waiting to see if humanity would live or die. Then why send me at all? He asked. Why not refuse? Why not fight? Because there is always a chance. Yoonji said. A small one. If you can make them see us differently, if you can change their minds, even a little, maybe that is enough. John smiled. It was the same sad smile he had worn at the council meeting on Earth. You are asking me to change the mind of a galaxy that has hated us since before we were born. Yes, Yoonji said simply. I am. John thought about his wife. Nari had always believed in miracles. She had believed that people could change, that love was stronger than hate, that hope was worth fighting for. She had believed in John even when he did not believe in himself. He reached into the drawer and touched the envelope of her letter. Still sealed. Still waiting. Tell me more about the Veilith, he said. In the second week, John began to prepare his speech. He wrote and rewrote it 100 times. He practiced in front of the mirror. He recorded himself and listened back, hating the sound of his own voice. Every version sounded wrong, weak, empty. How could words save a species? How could one man stand against 300,000 years of prejudice? On the 15th day, Yoonji called him with news. Ambassador, I have intercepted communications from the Nexus. Several species are calling for humanity's immediate destruction. They do not want a trial. They want extermination. John closed his eyes. How many? 17 species have openly demanded it. Others are undecided. Only 3 have spoken in our defense. And they are small and weak. What about the Valeth? The High Arbiter, Orith, has not stated his position. He will make the final decision. He has ruled the council for over 10,000 years. No one has ever changed his mind. Thank you for watching. We will not buy the 64-3. John looked at his photographs, at Nari's smile, at his dead friends, at the life he had lived and lost. Then I will be the first, he said. On the final day of the journey, John sat alone in the control room. The Galactic Nexus appeared on the screen. It was enormous. A structure the size of a small moon, glowing with lights from 1,000,000 windows. Ships flew around it, like insects around a flame. This was the center of the galaxy, the heart of civilization, the place where humanity's fate would be decided. John put on his suit. Simple and gray, the same one he had worn to Nari's funeral. He combed his hair. He looked at himself in the mirror. An old man. Tired. Alone. Carrying the hopes of 8 billion people on his shoulders. He thought about what Yunji had said. They have already decided. This trial is a formality before extermination. John reached into the drawer and took out his wife's letter. He held it in his hands for a long moment. Then he put it in his pocket. Still sealed. Not yet, he whispered. But soon. The ship began its descent toward the Nexus. John Morrison took a deep breath and stood tall. The galaxy was waiting. And he had a promise to keep. The doors of the horizon's edge opened, and John Morrison stepped onto the Galactic Nexus for the first time. The air was cold and thin, filled with strange smells that made his nose burn. The gravity was slightly wrong, making each step feel heavy and uncertain. But John kept walking. He had no choice. 4 guards waited for him at the docking bay. They were Velkari, a reptilian species with green scales and yellow eyes. Each one stood 3 meters tall and carried weapons that John did not recognize. They did not speak. They did not need to. Follow, one of them said, in broken human language. Council waits. John followed. The halls of the Nexus were vast and beautiful. The walls curved upward like the inside of a great shell, covered with art and symbols from thousands of worlds. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, soft and golden, casting no shadows. The floor was smooth as glass, reflecting John's image as he walked. And everywhere, there were aliens. John had seen pictures. He had studied files. But nothing had prepared him for this. Creatures of every shape and size moved through the halls around him. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4, some on dozens. Some floated through the air. Some crawled along the walls. Some had faces, and some had nothing that John could recognize as a face at all. All of them stopped to stare at him. John could feel their eyes on his back like needles. He heard whispers in languages he did not understand. He saw some of them point at him, making gestures that might have been curiosity, or disgust, or fear. He was a strange creature to them, a primitive, a monster from a violent world. He kept walking. The journey to the council chamber took nearly an hour. Through endless corridors, up massive elevators, across bridges that spanned chasms of empty space. John's legs ached. His heart pounded, but he did not slow down. He would not show weakness. Not here. Not now. Finally, they reached the entrance. 2 doors, taller than any building John had ever seen, made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. The guards stopped and stepped aside. Enter, human, one of them said. Face judgment. John looked at the doors. Behind them waited 42 species. Millions of representatives. Billions watching across the galaxy. Everything humanity had ever been, everything they could ever become, would be decided in the next few hours. He thought of Nari. He thought of her smile, her laugh, the way she held his hand when he was afraid. I am not afraid, he whispered to himself. Then he walked forward. The doors opened. The council chamber was not a room. It was a universe. John stepped onto a small platform that floated in the center of an endless sphere of light. Above him, below him, in every direction, there were seats, millions of seats, rising into infinity, filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. The light came from everywhere, soft and bright, making it impossible to see where the chamber ended. And in the center of it all, floating alone on his platform, stood John Morrison. One human, one old man, facing the judgment of the stars. Silence fell. A silence so deep that John could hear his own heartbeat. Every eye in the chamber was on him. Every mind was focused on him. He had never felt so small. Then a voice spoke. "The accused will stand before the arbiter." Another platform floated down from above. On it sat a single figure. The High Arbiter Orith. John had seen pictures of the Valeth, but Orith was different. He was ancient. His silver skin was thin as paper, stretched over bones that seemed too delicate to support any weight. His eyes were enormous. Dark pools that held no light, no warmth, no mercy. He wore robes of white and gold, and his long fingers rested on a staff that glowed with soft blue light. He was 10,000 years old. He had judged countless species. He had decided who would live and who would die since before human civilization existed. Now, he looked at John Morrison with those empty eyes. "Human," Orith said. His voice was soft but carried through the entire chamber. "You have been summoned to answer for the crimes of your species. Do you understand the charges against you?" John stood straight. "I do not," he said. "Please explain them to me." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some of the representatives shifted in their seats. Orith's expression did not change. "Very well," the arbiter said. He raised his staff, and images appeared in the air around them. Images of war, images of death, images of human soldiers fighting against the collective swarm. "Charge 1, Orith said. "Your species engaged in war against the collective swarm and achieved victory. No species has defeated the swarm in 50,000 years. You did so through methods that the Council considers unacceptable. Mass sacrifice, desperate tactics, a refusal to surrender. Even when defeat was certain." John watched the images. He saw faces he recognized. Friends who had died. Brothers and sisters in arms. They had not fought because they wanted to. They had fought because they had no choice. "Charge 2, Orith continued. "Your species has expanded across 17 worlds in less than 200 years. This rate of growth is unprecedented. It suggests aggression, ambition, and a desire for conquest that threatens the stability of the galaxy." More images. Human colonies on distant planets. Cities growing, spreading, reaching toward the stars. Children playing in parks on worlds their grandparents had never imagined. "Charge 3, Orith said. "Your species has refused integration into the Galactic Council. You have developed your own technology, your own culture, your own way of life. You have rejected our guidance and our wisdom. You have chosen to remain separate, independent, and unpredictable. Same have rise and wise." The images faded. Orith looked down at John with those ancient, empty eyes. "These are the charges against your species, human. The Council will now hear arguments from those who wish to speak." One by one, representatives rose to condemn humanity. A creature like a giant insect spoke of how humans had spread like a disease, infecting worlds that should have remained pure. A being of pure energy described humanity as a virus that needed to be eliminated before it infected the rest of the galaxy. A massive creature with tentacles and too many eyes called for immediate sterilization of Earth before it was too late. John listened to it all. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. He simply stood there, an old man in a gray suit, letting the hatred wash over him like waves against a rock. Finally, the speakers finished. The chamber fell silent again. Orith looked at John. "Human," he said. "You have heard the charges. You have heard the testimony against your species. Do you wish to speak in your defense?" John looked up at the endless rows of faces above him. Millions of beings who had already decided that humanity should die. He could feel their hatred, their fear, their contempt. They did not see him as a person. They saw him as a monster. He took a deep breath. "I do wish to speak," he said. "But first, I have a request." Orith's eyes narrowed slightly. "What request?" "I wish to show you something," John said. "Not words, not arguments, just images. Moments from my world that I believe you need to see." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted, some in anger, some in confusion. Orith raised his staff, and silence fell again. "This is irregular," the arbiter said. "I understand," John said. "But words are not enough. You have seen images of our wars, our expansion, our violence. Let me show you something else, something you have not seen. Then you can judge." Orith was silent for a long moment. His dark eyes studied John's face, searching for something. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, human. Show us what you believe we need to see. But know this. If your images are found to be manipulation or deception, it will only confirm what we already believe about your species." John nodded. "I understand." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. Unji had given it to him before he left Earth. It contained everything he needed. "Thank you," John said. "Now let me show you who we really are." John Morrison pressed the button on the small device in his hand. The air around him flickered and changed. The images of war and destruction that Orith had shown faded away. In their place, something new appeared. A little girl. She sat in a dark room made of concrete and metal. A bomb shelter, deep underground, built during the Swarm War. The walls shook with distant explosions. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere above her, humanity was fighting for its survival. But the girl was not crying. She was not screaming. She was drawing. She sat at a small table with paper and colored pencils, her tiny hands moving carefully, creating something beautiful in the middle of chaos. The image zoomed closer, and the council could see what she was drawing. Stars. She was drawing stars. Bright and colorful, scattered across the paper like dreams. "Her name is Sujin," John said. His voice was quiet but clear. She was 7 years old when this image was recorded. Her parents were both soldiers. Her father died in the first year of the war. Her mother was fighting somewhere above, trying to protect the city. The chamber was silent. Millions of eyes watched the little girl draw her stars. Sujin did not know if she would survive the night. John continued. She did not know if her mother would come back. She did not know if humanity would win or lose. But she drew stars anyway. Because even in the darkest moment, she still believed in light. The image changed. A man stood in a field of red dirt. Mars. Colony 7. The planet's surface stretched behind him, empty and harsh. Nothing but rocks and dust for thousands of kilometers. The man was old, his face burned by the sun and wind, his hands rough from years of work. He held a small plant in his hands, its green leaves a tiny spot of life in the endless red. "His name is Tejo," John said. "He was a farmer. He came to Mars with the second wave of colonists, 50 years ago. He wanted to grow food in a place where nothing had ever grown." The image showed Tejo kneeling in the dirt, planting seeds with careful hands. Behind him, a small greenhouse stood broken and damaged. The third failed harvest. The third time, everything he had built was destroyed by the harsh environment. The colony leaders told him to give up, John said. They said Mars would never be a place for life. They said he was wasting his time. But Tejo refused. He kept planting. He kept trying. Because he believed that someday, somehow, his grandchildren would eat fruit grown on this world. The image changed again. A battlefield. Smoke and fire everywhere. Bodies on the ground. Some human. Some alien. In the middle of the chaos, a woman ran forward. She wore a white armband with a red cross. A medic. Her face was covered in blood and dirt. Her uniform torn. But she kept running. She reached a figure lying in the rubble. But it was not a human. It was an alien. One of the Velothi species. A creature with 6 arms and purple skin. The same species that had spoken against humanity just minutes ago in this very chamber. The medic did not hesitate. She pulled the alien to safety, using her own body as a shield against the falling debris. She treated its wounds with shaking hands, speaking soft words in a language the creature could not understand. "Her name is Hana," John said. This was during the liberation of Colony 3. The Velothi forces had been part of the swarm's advance. They had killed many humans, but when Hana saw one of them wounded, she did not see an enemy. She saw someone who needed help. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Velothi representative, who had called for humanity's destruction just minutes ago, shifted uncomfortably in its seat. John continued. The images kept coming. A soldier named Junho, carrying his wounded enemy across a frozen wasteland, because leaving him to die felt wrong. A young woman named Minji, giving her last oxygen tank to a stranger on a failing space station, choosing to die so that someone else could live. Scientists working through the night to cure a disease that killed children. Musicians playing songs in the ruins of bombed cities. Teachers holding classes in refugee camps. Lovers holding hands in the shadow of war. Each image was simple. Each image was real. Each image showed something that the council had never bothered to see. Finally, John showed them one last image, the one he had been saving. Earth, seen from space, blue and white and green, floating in the darkness like a jewel. And on the surface, a massive crowd of people, gathered together, looking up at the sky. This was taken the day I left Earth, John said. 8 billion people, watching me fly toward you. They do not know what will happen. They do not know if I will succeed or fail. They do not know if tomorrow they will be alive or dead. The image zoomed in on faces in the crowd. Young and old, rich and poor, every color, every nation, every belief. Some were praying, some were crying, some were holding signs with messages of hope. But they are not giving up, John said. They are not hiding. They are standing together, hoping that somehow, against all odds, one old man can convince a galaxy to give them a chance. The image faded. The council chamber was silent. John looked up at the endless rows of seats above him, at the creatures who had already decided that humanity should die, at the High Arbiter Orith, watching with those ancient, empty eyes. "You see monsters," John said. His voice grew stronger now, filled with something that had been building inside him for years, for decades, for his entire life. "You see creatures who fight and spread and refuse to die quietly. And you are right. We do fight. We do spread. We do survive." He took a step forward, his old body straightening, his tired eyes burning with light. "But you forgot to ask why." The words echoed through the chamber. Millions of beings leaned forward, listening. "We fight because we love," John said. "We spread because we hope. We survive because we refuse to let the darkness win. Not for ourselves, for each other." He pointed at the space where Sujin's image had been. That little girl drew stars in a bomb shelter because she believed the war would end someday. That farmer planted seeds on a dead world because he wanted to give his grandchildren a future. That medic saved an enemy because she saw a life worth saving. John's voice cracked. "You have watched us for decades. You have seen our wars. You have seen our cruelty. You have seen our chaos. But you did not see Junho carrying his enemy to safety. You did not see Minji giving her life for a stranger. You did not see 8 billion people standing together, choosing hope over fear. He looked directly at Orith. Those ancient dark eyes, so cold, so distant, so certain. You see a species that has every reason to hate the universe, John said. We have been attacked, invaded, and threatened with extinction. We have lost everything. Again and again. And yet, here I stand. Not with weapons. Not with threats. Just with images of who we really are. John reached into his pocket and pulled out the letter. His wife's letter, still sealed. My wife died 3 years ago, he said quietly. Her name was Nari. She wrote me this letter before she passed. I have not opened it because I was afraid. Afraid of what she might say. Afraid that her words would break what little was left of me. He held the letter up so everyone could see it. But she believed in humanity. She believed that we were worth saving. And if I am going to die here today, I want to die believing the same thing. John carefully opened the envelope. His hands trembled as he unfolded the paper inside. He read silently for a moment. Then he looked up, and there were tears in his eyes. She wrote, My dearest John, do not be afraid. Do not give up. Do not let them tell you that humanity is not worth saving. We are flawed. We are broken. We make mistakes, but we also love, and hope, and dream. And that is enough. That has always been enough. John's voice broke. He stood there, an old man crying in front of a galaxy that wanted him dead, holding a letter from his dead wife. That is my testimony, he whispered. Not words, not arguments, just the truth. We are not perfect. We are not safe. But we are trying. Every day, we are trying to be better than we were before. He looked up at the council one last time. Is that not worth something? The chamber was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. The galaxy held its breath. The silence lasted forever. Or perhaps it only lasted a moment. John Morrison could not tell. He stood alone on his platform, tears drying on his old face, holding his wife's letter in trembling hands. Above him, below him, in every direction, millions of beings sat frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. The galaxy itself seemed to have stopped. John could feel his heart beating. Slow and heavy, like the drums of a funeral march. He had said everything he could say. He had shown everything he could show. Now, there was nothing left but waiting. High Arbiter Orith sat motionless on his platform. Those ancient dark eyes stared at John with an expression that the human could not read. 10,000 years of judging species. 300,000 years of ruling the galaxy. What did such a being think of one old man crying over a letter from his dead wife? John did not know. He could only wait. Then something happened. In the far corner of the chamber, almost invisible among the millions of seats, a small figure stood up. It was a Korathi, a species John had read about during his journey. They were small, no taller than a human child, with soft gray fur and large black eyes. Their world had been conquered by the Valith thousands of years ago. They had no voice in the council. They had no power. They were barely noticed. But this one, Korathi, stood up, and the chamber fell even more silent. The creature raised one tiny hand. Its voice was soft, barely above a whisper. But in the perfect quiet of the chamber, everyone heard it. Witnessed, the Korathi said. The word echoed through the chamber. John did not understand it at first. He looked at the small creature standing alone among giants, speaking a single word that seemed to carry the weight of worlds. Then another stood. A different species, tall and thin, with skin like blue glass. They raised their hand and spoke the same word. Witnessed, then another, and another, and another. John watched in confusion as more and more beings rose to their feet. Species he had never seen before. Species that had been silent during the entire trial. Species that had no reason to care about humanity's fate. One by one, they stood and spoke that single word. Witnessed, witnessed, witnessed. The word spread through the chamber like a wave. Dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. Species that had been conquered, forgotten, ignored. Species that had been told they were inferior, primitive, worthless. John felt something warm spreading through his chest. He did not know what was happening, but he knew it was important. He knew it meant something. Then Yunji's voice crackled through his earpiece. She was crying. "Ambassador," she said, her voice breaking. "The word. It is an ancient term, older than the council. It means they have seen the truth. They accept your testimony. They stand with you." John looked up at the rising tide of figures standing throughout the chamber. Small species, weak species, species that had been silent for thousands of years. They were standing for humanity. They were standing for him. The representatives who had spoken against humanity shifted uncomfortably. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. The Velothi delegate, who had called for Earth's destruction, slowly sank down in its seat, suddenly aware that it was being watched. But it was Orith who mattered. The High Arbiter sat motionless, watching the chaos unfold around him. His ancient face showed no emotion. His dark eyes gave nothing away. Slowly, the standing figures fell silent. The chamber settled into an uneasy quiet. Everyone turned to look at Orith. The final decision was his. It had always been his. The Arbiter raised his staff. The soft blue glow filled the chamber. "Silence," he said, and his voice carried through the infinite space. "The council will hear my judgment." John straightened his back. Whatever came next, he would face it standing tall. He owed that much to Nari. He owed that much to humanity. Orith looked down at him. Those eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. Those eyes that had judged countless species, decided countless fates. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Orith did something that no one expected. He stood up. A gasp ran through the chamber. The High Arbiter had not stood during a judgment in over 3,000 years. He was too old, too tired, too far beyond the concerns of ordinary beings. But now he rose to his feet, his thin body trembling slightly, his staff supporting his weight. He floated down from his platform until he was level with John. They were close now, close enough that John could see the fine lines on Orith's silver skin, the impossible age in those dark eyes. "Human," Orith said quietly. "John Morrison. I have lived for 10,000 years. I have seen species rise and fall. I have watched empires grow and crumble. I have made decisions that shaped the galaxy for generations." He paused, his ancient eyes studying John's face. "In all that time, no one has ever made me feel what I felt watching your testimony." John held his breath. "I saw a little girl drawing stars in a place of death," Orith continued. "I saw a man planting seeds in dead soil. I saw a woman saving her enemy. I saw a species that should have died, should have given up, should have accepted their fate. And instead, they chose to hope." Orith's voice trembled. It was barely noticeable, but John heard it. Something was breaking inside the ancient being, something that had been frozen for thousands of years. "We have forgotten what that feels like," Orith said. "We evolved beyond emotion, beyond struggle, beyond hope. We thought we were enlightened. We thought we were perfect. But watching your people, watching you, I realize we are the ones who are broken." The chamber was absolutely silent. No one had ever heard the High Arbiter speak like this. Orith raised his staff. "The judgment of the council is delayed," he said. "Humanity will not be destroyed. Not today. Instead, they will be given a probationary period, 100 of their years. During this time, we will watch them, we will learn from them, and perhaps, in time, we will understand why they fight so hard to live." John felt his legs weaken. He nearly fell, but he caught himself. Probation. Not death. Not extermination. A chance. Just a chance. It was enough. Orith looked at John one last time. "Go home, John Morrison," he said softly. "Tell your people that the galaxy is watching. Tell them to prove me right." John bowed his head. "I will," he whispered. "Thank you." He turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, the chamber erupted into chaos. Species arguing, shouting, celebrating, protesting. The galaxy had been shaken. Nothing would ever be the same. But John did not look back. He walked through the endless halls of the Nexus, past the aliens who now looked at him with different eyes. Not contempt. Not fear. Something else. Something like curiosity. Something like wonder. 3 weeks later, John Morrison returned to Earth. The crowds were even bigger than before. Billions of people, watching the sky, waiting for news. When his ship broke through the clouds, a sound rose up from the planet below. Cheering. Crying. The sound of 8 billion people realizing that they would live to see another day. John landed in Seoul, the city where he and Nari had been married. He walked through streets filled with people who wanted to touch him, thank him, tell him what he meant to them. But he did not stop. He had somewhere to be. He found her grave as the sun was setting. A simple stone with her name carved into it. Nari Morrison. Beloved wife. Dreamer of stars. John knelt in the grass and placed his hand on the cold stone. "I did it," he whispered. "I kept my promise." They listened. They actually listened. He pulled out her letter, now worn and soft from being carried against his heart for weeks. He read her words again, even though he had memorized them by now. "Do not be afraid. Do not give up. We are flawed. We are broken. We make mistakes, but we also love, and hope, and dream. And that is enough." John closed his eyes. Tears fell down his face, but he was smiling. "You were right, Nari," he said. "It was enough. It has always been enough." Far away, on the Galactic Nexus, High Arbiter Orith sat alone in his chamber. He had dismissed everyone else hours ago. Now, he sat in the darkness, watching recorded images on a small screen. A little girl drawing stars, a farmer planting seeds, a medic saving her enemy, a species that refused to give up. For the first time in over 300,000 years, Orith felt something. A warmth in his chest, a tightness in his throat, a wetness in his eyes. He was weeping. He did not know how to name the feeling. It had been so long since he had felt anything at all. But as he watched the images of humanity, over and over again, he began to understand. Hope. The word came to him from ancient memories, from a time before the Council, before the Empire, before he had forgotten what it meant to be alive. Hope. The galaxy had been waiting for something. For thousands of years, species had risen and fallen, conquered and been conquered, lived and died. But nothing had changed. Nothing had grown. The universe had become cold and still, waiting for something to wake it up. And now, from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, that something had arrived. Orith turned off the screen. He sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking about what he had seen, thinking about what it meant. Then, slowly, he smiled. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in 10,000 years, Orith was glad to be alive to see it. On Earth, John Morrison sat by his wife's grave until the stars came out. He looked up at the sky. at the millions of lights burning in the darkness. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was watching. Somewhere out there, the future was waiting. And for the first time since Nari died, John felt hope, not just for himself, for everyone, for humanity, for the little girl drawing stars, for the farmer planting seeds, for every person who had ever chosen to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. It was enough. It had always been enough.